SOG knives rock. A lot of them do. I've said as much in the reviews here at the Nutnfancy project. Hi guys, Nutnfancy here, banging out another fixed blade review. I'll get to the specific model here in a sec, but first the introduction. SOG is a favorite brand of mine. I've said as much in many of the reviews I've done, both the fixed blades and the folding knives. Great company. To their credit, they continue to ring out the mystique of the 1960s era's SOG, that is the Studies and Observation Group blades, in their fixed blade shapes. That is the Bowie shape, double scalloped, reminiscent of that original SOG knife that we've talked about in previous reviews. Good looking blades. They are, don't you think? And there's several of them. First off, you have the Super SOG Bowie. What a gorgeous knife that is. It has an epoxy filled leather stacked handle. Again, the same blade shape as you can see. Black titanium nitride coating on that. Then we have the smaller version. Here we are in the SOG catalog, actually the catalog I downloaded. That's a SOG Bowie with a 6.4 Aus-8 blade. Again, the traditional leather stacked handle, which kind of harkens back to, again, the 1960s era blades. Because a lot of guys just love that traditional look. The SOG Agency is another example of that. 7.5 inch, very traditionally styled as far as the Vietnam era blades go. Cool knife. And then finally, the gorgeous SOG Trident 2.0. That's a 6.4 inch blade. Pretty much a SOG Bowie, just updated with newer materials. The micarta washers instead of the leather. And still wearing that very distinctive SOG blade. They're not the only ones that use this blade shape, by the way. Cold Steel has a couple that are shaped pretty much the same way. There's some other knockoffs running around there too. And it is a good looking blade. When I think of SOG fixed blades though, in a lot of ways, even though they do have a lot of utility for their give and roll, and we're jumping right into the POU, i.e. my talking points on this specific review, they are somewhat limited in value compared to other offerings, and we'll talk about that when we get to competitive options. In other words, an SOG fixed blade is not going to be super cheap. It's generally speaking. Again, value is in the eyes of the beholder. Don't know what you define as cheap, what you define as expensive. But the SOG Tech Bowie, I think it's around $100 or so. For $100, it's going to function well in the role of a medium-sized fixed blade. As a deployment blade, you bet. Weighing out about 13 ounces with a great sheath. As I mentioned in my review, you'll see an annotation there. The Kydex sheath with a quick attachment capability with that American Sportsman's Products clip-on device. Pretty cool. Good blade. However, is it the ultimate wilderness blade? I will say it is not. It doesn't even come close because it just doesn't have the weight that you need for chopping out there, making shelters, building fires, wilderness traps, maybe even digging if you're in an emergency. You could dig with this for sure. But what I'm talking about is the heft of the double scalloped SOG Bowie shaped blade. Good looking. I think it's a great fighting blade, as I've said in previous reviews, as is the Bowie design in general. Said that too. I love the Bowie design. I think it's deadly. And I love the sweep. However, I was very elated getting to the subject of this review to see that SOG has a blade while still retaining the coolness, fit, and finish, quality, and kind of all the things that SOG is known for in their fixed blade knives, like this Tech Bowie, retaining all of that and yet getting into maybe some more utility in the wilderness function, and that is, drum roll, the SOG Creed. That's right. Brand new knife, leased as of 2009, I believe, by SOG, and this inherits all of that coolness and mystique of the SOG line in a very unusual blade shape that is also very functional. Getting back to POU, this I'm going to primarily classify still, even though it is much more functional, as a collectible. That's because I don't think a lot of dudes are willing to go out and spend, I think the street price on this is about $140. Yourcornerstore.com sells it for around that, maybe $138 or something. The list price shown on SOG's website is kind of whacked. It's like $225 or something ridiculous like that. That's not street price. So what do you define as expensive? Don't know. For me, that is kind of getting to the point where I don't want to take a blade out and thrash it. And that's because, jumping down in the talking points, there's so many other competitive options that are cheaper and probably even more effective at this knife as a wilderness blade, i.e. survival blade. That's what we're talking. So if you're buying the SOG Creed as a survival blade, I think it will function well. We'll get to that when I talk about weight, balance, and feel. It's a great survival blade. There are others that are going to be cheaper and better in roll, but it also has a second type of cool. Very cool looking, inheriting all that, the stuff we've been talking about by the SOG blades. Defensive knife. Could it function as a tactical fixed blade? Maybe you soldiers out there. I think there's a lot better options. The Tech Bowie might be one of them. See how its blade is better shaped for penetration? It's, if you're talking about pierce cutting, defending your life, that's a better blade shape. You just can't beat, well, you can, but it's hard, beating the standard Bowie shape. Very functional. Jumping ahead in the blade shape, this one has a lot of belly, has a lot of weight forward in the blade design. That's going to make it excel at chopping compared to its other SOG stablemates, like the Tech Bowie, maybe the gov-tac, the Trident 2.0. This is going to be a much better chopper. So POU, I classify it primarily first as a collectible. I think guys will just want to buy it, hang on to it, enjoy it. It's a very cool blade. It delivers all of that coolness in spades. Secondarily, I think it would be a good wilderness blade. And then if you had to press it into a defensive role, you could. I think there's a lot better blades out there, as I've discussed in many, many other videos here at the Nutnfancy project. Quality is superb. It's wonderful. The fit and finish on all SOG blades is just wonderful. It's very cool. Now, years ago, the SOGs used to be made in Japan. Now, they're made in Taiwan. You can see the Tang stamp there. I'm trying to line it up. Again, like I've said for well over a year now, it really doesn't matter where a knife is made. Okay, I'm real anal, got to clean that blade off. Taiwan, China, I'm talking quality here, guys, not politics. It doesn't matter as long as a company exercises very tight and strict quality controls. How many times have we seen this in a number of different blades that I've rolled in front of the camera? Blades that exhibit the same type of high quality finish that you're seeing here with this beautiful SOG Creed knife, and they're made overseas. Now, if you have issues with overseas knives, that's going to be an issue. There's plenty of U.S. offerings out there, but that's a completely different subject, really not germane to what we're talking about here. We're talking about quality. You cannot fault the quality on this knife in any way. It's superior. And that might be one reason they charge a little bit more for it. I still think it's priced a little bit high. I would like to see this thing come in under $100. Maybe around $90 would be my wish. I would love that. But the quality, look at the finish, the satin finishing on that blade. Gorgeous. Gorgeous. And I do love the satin finish on the Creed. It's available as well. Sorry, the air compressor's kicking off. It's available as well in a black titanium nitride coating that you can get if you want. And that's a good looking. That's that tie knife plasma deposited finish they do in a vacuum there at SOG. Beautiful. And that's pretty much what this is, by the way, on the Tech Bowie. Good looking. So it's just awesome. Weight, balance, and feel. The weight is overall 16.4 ounces. And now I kind of got to jump ahead in the talking points because this is an appropriate point to do it. Let's look at some competitive offerings when we talk about weight. Going to the first type of cool, wilderness blade, how well will it function? This, by the way, the Tech Bowie is not, in my opinion, a wilderness blade. Not a good option. It could function in that, but it just doesn't have much chopping capability. Like I said in my review, you can do it, but you're really going to be expending a lot of energy and a lot of calories, of course, depending on what you're chopping. If we look at a next generation K-bar, also reviewed in the Nutnfancy project. This knife weighs 17.5 ounces, so it's going to be a little bit heavier, but it's the same size. I will say the SOG Creed, I haven't gone out and thumped on this, and I'm not too sure the owner really wants me to, because this is a collectible for him. I don't think it'll ever get hard use, so I might talk him into it, he might just do it. We'll see. However, this will not chop as good as that, and it's just a function of dynamics, guys, and physics. When I have a 1/4 inch blade like this SOG Creed is, look at the thickness difference. See that? That is a thick blade. 1/4 inch, good job, SOG. To me, that means they are serious about this knife being able to perform wilderness tasks. And pretty much every task, again, maybe secondarily defensive. The K-bar is no slouch, as you've seen me in the woods thrashing on it, getting the job done, but it's not super thick, nor does it have a forward heft to it. So like I've shown, talked about, and demonstrated, it takes more effort to chop with a K-bar. Doesn't matter what kind. You could say the next generation in the stainless steel that I just showed you could be this, the K-bar fighting utility knife. What a high value, great blade this remains, by the way. $52 for this. Less than half the price of that SOG Creed. But this is not going to be as good a chopper as a Creed. You have to hold the Creed to appreciate how that 1/4 inch slab of steel really transforms it into a very what am I trying to say? I don't want to say hefty because it's very light in hand, but well balanced and purposeful. I guess that's where I'll go with that. Blade. 1/4 inch steel. I love 1/4 inch blades for wilderness use because they wedge so nicely when you're doing batoning, cutting, and yes, they're very strong. My reference one in this size category, again, is a Cold Steel Recon Scout. Currently made in SK5 steel, I believe, by Cold Steel. I've thrashed on this blade, proven it many times. Yeah, I've had problems with them before, busted one. But this one has lasted very well indeed under hard use. And again, it has the same thickness. It's actually a little bit thicker than the Creed, but full flat grind. Wonderful, wonderful knife, this one. And it's a reference. It's heavier than the SOG Creed. I think this one's like 17.5 ounces or something like that, a little bit more with the sheath. But this is good weight, depending on what you're doing up there. The balance of the Creed, outstanding. Feel, I'm going to have to jump down to the handle guard talking point for this. The feel is excellent, and it inherits and uses the exact same handle off the Tech Bowie. Okay, and I discussed that in that review in depth. For summary, what I said about it is I love the Craton grip. It absorbs shock during cutting tasks, chopping tasks. Great grip. I'm not super worried about it wearing out. I think some guys might be. If you are, just peel it off, put on, whatever handle material you want. Micarta, 550 paracord, any number of handle materials. I could easily, not easily, but I could do it, put a different handle on this and make it look pretty cool. I think you'll be hard pressed to wear it out, most guys. I don't think most guys get out actually and use their blades like I do. I don't. It's a lot of work. But if you do, and if you do wear it out, replaceable by you. The white spacers, good looking, like I said. The double cross guard made out of stainless steel, functional. On the SOG Tech Bowie, I said, I don't remember if I said or not, there is no jimping right there like you see on the gov-tac, and I don't have that gov-tac handy right now. And so for this user, I just said, hey dude, I'm going to just run some skateboard tape up there for you. Cool with that? And he's like, yeah, do it. And you can lock your thumb in there. Initially I was thinking, well, I don't really have a need to go beyond that double guard, but you might, because this handle's not super long. Like I've said before, I wish it had another 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 inch in length, because my hands are kind of on the large size, not extra large. If you have extra large hands, on all these SOG fixed blades, at least these ones, you're going to probably run out of room. If that's the case, then you might have to spill over on top of the spine during a cutting task, depending on what it is. And in that case, that skateboard tape functions pretty good, and it basically costs nothing to do it. Love the balance, the weight, and the feel. And anytime you bring a serious chopping blade in the out of doors, expect to take more weight with you. That's just the way it is. If we go with a regular K-bar fighting utility knife, we're going to be around 15 ounces, so it's a little bit lighter. but 1/4 inch slab of steel, chopped well, a little more weight. That's again kind of erring towards firepower side of the equation. Blade design and steel. I mentioned the belly already, and it is wonderful. I'm going to use Longhorn by Lone Wolf as a pointer today. Look at that. I love good belly on a large survival knife. It just slices better. This portion here is hollow ground, starting from about mid-spine. We have an unsharpened swedge coming off the top ridge there. And again, we have the blood groove running here. Again, this is this aesthetic. It does nothing functionally except maybe take off a couple of micro ounces, fractions of ounces of steel that we probably don't need since the thickness is so great. Great blade shape though. It may turn some guys off. This might be a very polarizing blade shape in that some guys may not dig the design and how it's so upswept, how the swedge kind of rises above the double guard. For me, Nutnfancy, I love it. The reason I love it is because I know just by looking at it how it's going to function. I really don't, this may sound ridiculous, but I don't have to go out and cut with this knife. I know it's going to be an effective cutter. After having used so many different blades in the woods, different styles, different varieties, I kind of get a feel of what will chop well and what won't. I think I've said that on camera out in the woods before. And I think the SOG Creed, not positive, but I think it's going to chop and cut very well. Good skinning area right here. So as a survival knife, skinning out large game, small game, that belly is very effective. Love it. And it comes all the way back here. Not the belly, but the edge does. They don't do anything ridiculous and like starting the edge late, kind of like they do on the agency. If you look at that SOG agency, I'm not a big fan about how far forward the cutting edge starts from the double guard. I don't know if I mentioned this on the Tech Bowie handle. I kind of had some squared corners, but I've really never in use found them to be that much of a problem. They're pretty comfortable in hand. And again, here we go with the standard SOG pommel that has that very cool custom cylinder nut that SOG has designed and uses. I think that's mostly for aesthetics, and like I said in my Tech Bowie review, it's also for not having you take the knife apart, which I'm not super fond of. I always like having the option of servicing my blades if I have to, especially if they take a dunk in salt water. The sheath on the SOG Creed is made of leather. This is another reason why I say that it's primarily a collectible blade. Guys that love the mystique of those SOG blades dating back to Vietnam, they like the stacked leather washers, they like the glossy metallic finishes in black and silver, which produces a very good looking blade, will probably like the leather sheath better because it kind of harkens back to that SOG tradition. You know, the Vietnam blades didn't have kydex, they had leather. And this is a very good looking black, well sewn, strong SOG sheath. I love the emblem they've put in there. You can see the stitching is tight. Again, keep just right in line with all of SOG's quality. You have an option to throw on a lanyard there or leg tie if you want. I like the interface that the security snap has with the double guard. You can see that it just aces right over that double guard, snaps into position, and that is a completed package for the SOG Creed. Isn't that good looking? But that's, in my opinion, the second type of cool. To me, as I've said, and I'm going to stick with this, for wilderness blades, serious wilderness blades, I do not prefer a leather sheath. They're problematic. They get wet, they stay wet, they stretch, and the main problem I have is once that leather stays wet on a camp trip or an outdoor adventure, it's just basically going to immerse that blade in moisture the whole time. Yeah, I know it has AUS 8 blade steel, and I forgot to mention that. It can still rust. You know, AUS 8 blade steel is not rust proof. It's a high chromium, high carbon steel, wears well, holds an edge well. By the way, that Creed comes out of the box razor sharp. Great job, SOG, on that. Just awesome edge out of the box. But, you know, last thing I want to do is just have it, you know, marinate in moisture during my trip. So I much prefer We're talking functionality. First type of cool, a Kydex or plastic sheath for my wilderness blades. Now, the reason I say this is primarily a collectible knife, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's cool. AUS-8 steel, I think, is a good choice for this. And in high moisture conditions, I mean, yeah, it's 140-ish blade, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. But in high moisture conditions, like lots of rain, maybe in a rainforest, jungle use, it'll beat 1095 for maintenance. I struggle keeping 1095 rust free. Heck, look at that. Even as I talk, and I'm very careful about my blade maintenance, but look on this Recon. You can see a little bit of rust right here. This is, it couldn't have happened at a better time. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Though I oil my blades, I'm very careful about them. You're going to get rust on a 1095 blade, especially in high moisture areas. AUS-8, it's a better option. It's more rust resistant. Sheath is beautiful for what it is, but it's not plastic, not Kydex. Also, it's a loop variety. It's going to migrate on your belt a little bit, possibly because it does not clip and lock onto your belt quite as much. By the way, if I didn't mention, the knife itself is 12.6 ounces, which I think is very reasonable for the type of chopping and skinning capability this thing will have. Beautiful knife. Competitive options. I've shown you a couple already. This one, of course, the Cold Steel Recon Scout. And then I got to roll in this one because it is in category. And that is the Ontario Rat 7. I think RC Cutlery is making the RC7, which, how you doing, I think is very much overpriced for what it is. I have two of these. This is my D2 version, which I think is probably a poor choice for an outdoor steel. It's just too brittle. 1095, yeah, rust, but man, it's just tough. You can thump on it. It rarely breaks. I won't say it never breaks, but rarely breaks. But just for form factor, this is a good comparison against the SOG Creed. This Rat 7 in D2, I think, was around 90-ish, $90, so still less than the SOG Creed. Full flat ground, drop point, very functional. You've seen us thumping on this knife out in the snowy woods, and we love it. It's not a large survival knife, kind of like the Ontario RTAC 2, which I absolutely love. Maybe the Ontario Marine Raider. Those are great knives. But as a medium-sized blade that strikes a balance between firepower and mobility, Rat 7 rocks. But it's going to come in less. It's going to have a full flat grind as opposed to the hollow grinding. And it's probably not going to be quite as stainless. So that's an option for you if you're considering the SOG Creed. But now we're flexing into the second kind of cool. I'm sorry, the first type, just objective performance. Honestly, when we talk about the Creed, this is very important because it is a cool blade. And I think, like I said earlier, some guys will just want to add it to their collections because it is so cool. But, and actually, SOG did get it right, I think, in their write-up. And I know there's a lot of hype in write-ups, aren't there? In gun catalogs, knife catalogs, and you kind of got to separate it. And I think I try to do that for you guys as best I can. But in their catalog, they did say this, verbatim. They said it's an example of a collectible working knife, of collectability or working capability, something along those lines, coming together. I think that is an accurate description of the SOG Creed. It is very capable in its role as a medium-sized, some guys would say large-sized wilderness blade. It will chop, hack, skin, do all kinds of utility tasks with effectiveness, and yet it retains that very cool SOG heritage, fit and finish, looks, and just overall coolness factor. You will pay a little bit more for it. It's not super cheap, but value is always in the eyes of the beholder. SOG Creed, it comes highly recommended from Nutnfancy. For what it is a superior blade in a lot of different ways. By the way, I didn't mention this, you guys might be wondering. That's the lanyard I sewed onto it for the owner. That's just hollowed out 550 cord and ACU pattern with a toggle there. I always like that toggle, just because it's a quick way to adjust it over your gloved hand if you're doing chopping tasks. And yeah, that Tech Bowie grip is decent, as long as your hands aren't super, super huge. There you have it, fixed blade review. That's a SOG Creed, great blade. Nutnfancy signing off. Thanks for everything you do for me. I'll see you soon with more reviews out.